Amen. We have been blessed by God sending to us the most anointed people. All those folks who serve on our staff are the biggest blessings to our church and to my life. And so I want to offer up to you today one of our newest blessings. He is one of those who came to Joy MCC as a result of Pulse. Look what God can do. And I want to offer up to you today Craig Lewis to bring us God's incredible word. Craig, come on, give him Jesus, honey.
I think that I would be remiss if I didn't say, excuse me, how grateful I am to stand in this moment, in this space with you. How grateful I am to be in a church that allows me to discern God's call on my life and what that means for me to work in a ministry, in an organization that I don't know. And I plan on starting seminary in the fall to hopefully figure that out, although it may not work if you ask Larry, but it has been the joy of my life to be here with you, and I use joy on purpose, to be here with you, to work with such a supportive mentor, and with such intelligent and supportive staff. And I have no words besides how grateful I am. I promised myself I wasn't going to do that. This moment that we are in is 15 years in the making, and I'm so grateful for it.
Look at God. Amen.
Today we're going to talk about everyone's favorite story. I'm sure that you've heard some 5 or 7-year-olds singing it. A couple characters you may realize: Anna, Elsa, a little snowman named Olaf. We're going to talk about Let It Go, Let It Go. Okay, actually quite the opposite. We're going to talk about everyone's least favorite story in Genesis 22. So go with me. Can you picture it right here? Right here stands Abraham holding the fire to burn the only thing he's ever wanted. Holding the fire to burn the only thing God has ever promised him. And then here stands Isaac, holding the wood to make the altar for his own sacrifice. Both of them standing here about to give up something they love. Both of them staring up Mount Moriah, I believe scared. It's this moment. This moment is where we'll spend our time. This moment, I believe, is a story in and of itself, a story of faith, a story of sacrifice, a story of commitment.
Amen.
And all of these things, I believe, make the power of relinquishment. They teach us how to lay our Isaac down. Please pray with me. Mighty and merciful God, thank you for this day, for us to come together and study the power of not holding on. The relief we get from releasing and what we are to gain by sometimes giving up. Help us to understand what happens when we lay our Isaac down. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, my comfort and my conqueror. And all of the church says, Amen. To get to this moment, almost everyone knows the most recent part of this story, right? We just heard it. Abraham hears from God, Abraham, take your son Isaac, whom you love, go to the land of Mount Moriah and sacrifice him there. And he did. No hesitation. He got up early. No hesitation. Got up early, gathered his donkeys, 2 servants, split the wood for the altar offering, and then he was off. He was off. He walked for 3 days. Can you imagine those days? Can you imagine what's going on in his mind over and over and over for 3 days? I don't know about you, but when things are hard, I like to get them over quickly. If the pool is too cold, I jump in, right? If the Band-Aid needs to come off, I rip it. This must have been the spiritual equivalent of ripping off a Band-Aid, one painful arm hair at a time, right? Ladies, if you don't know, it hurts. This must have been painful. Why was Abraham willing to do it? Why was he willing to endure this? You see, this isn't the first time that Abraham has heard the voice of God. This isn't the first time that God's told Abraham to do something. When he was 75, Abraham was told to pick up everything he has and to move to a land he doesn't know, that I will tell you, just start walking. And he did it. And he did it. He took up his wife, everything he had, left everyone he knew and everything he loved, and he went. And for that, God promised him that he would bring forth great nations, that he would multiply like the sands of the beaches of the oceans. But Abraham got tired of waiting. Abraham decided to take things into his own hands. He grew weary, so he had a son outside of his wife that he named Ishmael. And Abraham loved this son very much, but it wasn't the son that God had promised. So he had to give him up anyways. He had to relinquish it anyways. So he sent him off with his mother. You see, Abraham learned the lesson that sometimes when we take things into our own hands and we get what we think we want, we still have to relinquish it anyway. So I believe that this man willing to walk through those days, heart beating, ripping out of his chest every painful step, there was a man walking with the faith who has done it before. There was a man walking with the faith who has tried to take things into his own hands and knew that it probably wouldn't work out anyways. Because this is a man standing here of faith that if God promised it, it's coming. You can get tired and try it on your own, but if God promised it, he will follow through with it. This is a man standing with the faith. Hebrews tells us that he believed even walking back down that mountain with Isaac, even if by resurrection it would happen. He had no stories of resurrection. He didn't have Lazarus or Jesus like we do. He believed something that he had never heard of. God would come through with something he didn't even know for it to happen. This is a man of faith. Abraham shows us the faith needed to relinquish. Abraham shows us what it means to lay our Isaac down in faith. Might we have that faith? To lay our Isaac down. What does this look like in 2017? Will you be asked to lay your child on an altar? Will you be raising the knife to burn them? No, you won't. But what about that partner that you think you should get that's not come? You see, in 2017, it doesn't look like a son. It doesn't look like a child. In 2017, maybe it's a financial situation. That career you're planning may look fantastic, but God has other plans.
Hallelujah.
In 2017, I want you to hear me. It doesn't have to be an offspring to be an offering. You see, this is what God is trying to tell us. In 2017, it may look very different. What will your Isaac be to lay down? I felt the call of ministry very early in my life. I can remember standing on the edge of the sofa, casting out the demons from my Care Bears and G.I. Joes on the coffee table. It's true. And in case you were not aware, it is very labor intensive to save the souls of some Care Bears. It is a lot of work and responsibility for a 4-year-old. But I was up to the task, just so you know. And then my junior year of high school, I'll never forget being asked to lead Vacation Bible School for the 4th and 5th graders. I had the time of my life. I finally understood what God had called me to do, to be a teacher, but I also probably spent just as much time decorating the room for the theme as I did creating the materials. No words out of you. Perhaps this should have been foreshadowing of things to come. You see, then, as a senior in high school, when I realized I was gay, I was asked to leave the church that I had grown to love. And so then I spent all of my time trying to reconcile how God would give me this thing that I couldn't control, and then call me to work in a church that no longer accepted me. So I decided to leave it all behind. I moved to the big city and went off to college, big city being Memphis, and left it all behind. But something was missing. Something was different. There was a hole that I had that I no longer felt full. And I began to eat. I began to eat. You see, I'm from the South, and I mean the real South, not Florida South. And we show our love through food. Some of my fondest memories are from around a dining table. That's where I learned compassion and love and comfort and fulfillment. So it only made sense I would turn back to that when I was missing compassion and love and comfort and fulfillment. And I felt that I was in control. I thought that I had it all in control. But slowly, over the next year and a half, I ballooned up over 150 pounds in a year and a half. It became quite obvious that I did not have things in control. And you see, I have always told this story thinking that my Isaac to lay down was my control, but a man much smarter than me recently told me that I was never actually in control. So I've now, in the past couple of weeks, started looking back through the story, and I found out I didn't have to give up control. I had to give up my need for comfort. I laid down my comfort. When I was willing to be uncomfortable, I was able to look at those feelings head on, to understand what was happening to me. When I was willing to sit in a dark corner and cry for 3 days to figure things out. When I was willing to be uncomfortable, I was willing to have the faith that God would bring it through. What will your Isaac be? What will your Isaac be? Maybe you're struggling with infertility. Maybe you're struggling with the marriage that you just knew was going to work. Maybe you're struggling with the partner that's still not coming. Maybe you're struggling with the job that still hasn't come. Maybe it's not gonna. So maybe what we need to lay down are our intentions, our expectations, our need for control, our need for comfort. I don't know what it is. But when it happens, I pray that we have the faith of an Abraham who is willing to trust in a God that'll do something you've never even seen.
That's right.
To trust in a God that's going to bring you back down a mountain just as whole as when you went up. To have the faith of Abraham to relinquish. But what about Isaac in this moment? You see, this story has always scared me. Sitting as a small child on the wooden benches of a backwood Baptist church in Natchez Trace, Tennessee, this story scared me. We didn't have air conditioning. That probably helped. It was hot, so I felt the fire, maybe. I don't know. But this story, how could a God that loves his children ask a father to kill his child? Researching it now as an adult, I've actually learned that most theologians and rabbis actually believe Isaac was in his 20s or 30s. You see, the amount of wood to actually carry up to have an offering, a child wouldn't be able to carry it. It would take a grown man. It would take a grown man to carry that amount of wood. So knowing that Isaac had to do it, we can start to infer that Isaac was a grown man. And that changes the story. That changes the story from a child who is afraid and fearful to a story of a grown man who is a willing participant in this story, a grown man who knows what's happening. You see, Abraham was 100 when he had Isaac. So if Isaac's in his 20s and 30s, and he's holding this wood, I don't know the last time you tried to outrun a 120 or 130-year-old man, but I bet Isaac could have done it. He could have dropped that wood and run off, but he stayed. Even so, Isaac says, Father, I see that you got the wood, the fire, and we've got wood, but I don't see a sheep. So that, I think, tells us that Isaac had an inkling of what was going on. Isaac understood there was nothing around them that they would traditionally burn, and he was starting to understand. And even if it wasn't happening in that moment, he definitely knew when he was getting bound up at the top of the mountain. Again, 120 years old, 20 years old, he could have fought him off. He didn't have to stand there. He stood there. Matter of fact, how can a 120 or 130-year-old man pick up a 20 or 30-year-old man and lay them on an altering? I tell you that he probably laid down on his own. This story is now a story of sacrifice. You see, sometimes laying down your Isaac means laying down all of yourself.
Say it.
All of yourself. And will we be able to do that? Will we be able to stand like Isaac and sacrifice everything we have, all of us? May we have the faith of an Abraham who believes that a God will follow through. May we have this willingness to sacrifice like Isaac, who believes so heartedly in his father that he's willing to carry wood up a hill for his own sacrifice. Don't we know another story where someone carries wood up a hill for their own sacrifice? But even those two things are not my favorite part of this story. My favorite part of this story is that they're here together. The author actually goes to such great lengths to tell us this. He says that they have the wood, they have the fire, and they went, and the two of them walked off together, as we heard when Jamar and Stanley read. And the two of them walked off together. The two of them were committed to one another. The two of them both giving up something that they knew and loved and willingly were giving up. And the two of them walked off together. But if that wasn't enough, the author goes on to say that even after Isaac completely understands what's going on, even after Isaac's question of, where's the sheep, Dad? I don't understand. It still says, and they kept on walking together. You see, the author wants to push, I think, Moses wants to push that they continued in unison. That we have two willing participants who are so committed to the cause, so committed to one another, that they're willing to travel up that mountain together. And church, I tell you today that we are standing at the base of our own Mount Moriah. We are standing here today, and I pray that we have the faith of an Abraham. I pray that we have the willingness to sacrifice like Isaac, but I pray that we are committed to one another so that, church, when they write our story, when they use their words to describe what we have done, may they say that some of us stood holding the fire to burn the only thing we ever loved. Some of us stood willing to give up the only thing we ever felt promised, but some of us stood holding the wood to give up all of ourselves, but above all else. I pray that they use the words that we stood together, that we were committed in unison, or in fact that they use those exact same words, church, that when they write our story, they're able to end it with, and they kept on walking together. Amen.